right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And Jacob, how are you?
Blessings in Jesus. Wonderful to be with you. I'm in Tennessee at the moment, on my way to Los Angeles. Looking forward to next Sunday with Pastor Marco Quintana in Devore Christian Fellowship, Mother's Day. Please join us if you're in the LA area and you don't have a church. We would love to see you.
Amen. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for being with us. And David Lister, we're not too far from Jacob today. So, how are
Couple
you?
doors down.
Couple of doors down. How are you?
I'm all right, man. This excited about coming and seeing California and the land of fruits and nuts and the trees and everything and the good weather and stuff. So, and seeing all of my brothers and sisters in the Lord.
All right. Fruits and nuts. Well, you're not referring to Jay and I, right?
No, that was just the other.
Thanks, David. Jay, well, you and I are in the land of fruits and nuts. How are you?
I'm good. It's a little bit hot. It's unseasonably warm for this time of year, but I guess I'll take it. It's another day. Blessed by the Lord.
Last week I was wearing a sweater and a
Hmm.
beanie, and people were complaining about the cold weather. I said, just give it a week; it'll change. So, nonetheless, thank you so much for being here, Jay. And Davey's out today. He is traveling, much needed travel and vacation, spent some time away, and he sends his regards. I talked to him yesterday, and doing well. So, God bless you, Davey, and hope you and Ron are doing well while you travel. And all those who are watching us live and those who are watching us now, welcome to Catching Up. Jay, remind me, episode 200 and
33,
third,
233 episodes of Catching Up with Jacob.
getting close to that 250 mark. We should
Yep.
have a celebration for that. Catching Up with Jacob, and we're looking at different news event, current events in light of the biblical lens, in light of biblical prophecy, and of course we have Jacob and different takes on what's going on in the world and what the Bible says, and we have questions at the end. So if you would join us with questions, I think Rumble's down today. Jay, is that accurate still?
Rumble is still up,
Oh,
so
praise God.
we don't know how long because it is under DDS attack, so it
Oh,
might go down.
okay.
Uh, if it does, the Twitter chat is now working, or the X chat. I can see a lot of people that regularly on Rumble actually chatting there. So this is great.
Awesome. Jay, will we take, if Rumble goes down, will we take the questions on X? Is that what we want to do today?
I will look at both X and YouTube,
All
but
right.
if you're on YouTube, you need to move over to X to hear the answer to your question.
That's right. That's right. So you can ask questions on YouTube, on X, since if Rumble goes down, of course. And but in order to view the answers to the questions, you need to jump onto X, onto Rumble, out of YouTube, of course, on the other ones as well. Memorial.tv, RTN, memorialtv.org. We have Telegram. Am I missing one? Am I missing one? No, I think that's
Telegram,
Facebook
no, you,
Live.
you got them all.
Got them all. Okay, wonderful. So lots of choices, and we love to have you. And not only catch up with Jacob, but also you can catch up with Jacob this weekend, as he will be with us, as he mentioned, in Community Church of Devore here in San Bernardino, here in Southern California. Come and meet us. And Jacob, you're on your way. This is a quick stop. We're going to say hi, bye, and you're on the way out to another part of the world. Where are you going?
We're Japan to visit our children at our children's mission in Subic Bay, Olongapo area of the Philippines. Going to Vietnam after that to meet, well, we don't talk about that. Then we're going to do the prison tour, evangelistic tour of Thailand. From Thailand, I go back to Vietnam briefly, and then down to Australia, New Zealand, and then return to Los Angeles and beyond.
Very nice. Jacob, you got a busy schedule, so much prayer for you. I did see that you're
Right.
going to be in New Zealand, Australia area in June. So you
Correct.
got quite a task. So keep yourself in the grace and the love of God and get your legs
Amen.
healthy so that you can continue to preach God's word in these difficult days. David Lister, you're also going and you're going to be visiting usually the same places, but I think there's a couple of overlap, but then a couple of places that you're not going to be there, but you're going to Asia as well. Any announcements you'd like to say?
Yeah, going to see the kids. Also, we're going to be meeting some new pastors there in the Philippines. We've expanded the number of prisons. We're up to like 9 now, and we're going to be going to a poor area where uh, the the people don't have money just for supplies and things like that. So we got to see about helping that. The people can't afford, the little grocery items and things that some prison requires sometimes, but we have and we're going to a juvenile prison this time too. So please pray that we have the right words and everything, and then going to Chomboro, which is maximum security prison.
Pray that
Amen.
they let us out.
Amen. Amen. So thank you,
But they
David.
got an
Appreciate it.
active group, Marco. It's a good group. In fact, they're now asking for topics, and this one Jacob's going to be doing is Balaam. They want to know about Balaam.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Very good. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. And Jay, where can they find all these wonderful teachings, different pastors? Obviously, we have Jacob, we have teachings from Sandy Simpson, you have some of myself. But where can they find all of this good stuff?
Well, as you can see on the screen now, here are a list of the upcoming podcasts and where you can find them. Just a few off the top of my head. Of course, you can go to Amazon, Spotify, Apple, download anything you want from the podcast, listen to them while you're traveling. When you don't have Wi-Fi, if they're on the local device, you'll be able to listen to it uninterrupted. Want to go for a walk? There's a great way to also learn while you're walking. Just download the podcast. Also, just want to remind everyone, you can go to Moriel Chapel on YouTube, subscribe there. That's where all the teachings are from Sandy and Jacob. All the Bible studies are there as well. Also, some lessons from Marco Quintana. Lastly, I would encourage you. We have 132 people chatting on Twitter, Moriel TV. Let's see, Moriel TV 9979, is it? I think so.
Yes, I think that's what it is. Yes.
Oh, sorry. TV Moriel at TV Moriel 99798
Oh, the 8.
on Twitter. Please follow that. There's great content on Twitter, and it is a very robust player. No commercial interruptions for those that do not like having to skip ads on Rumble. So join us there. Join the conversation.
That's right. And I was on Spotify just because my kids use it for different music, worship music, Christian music, and I like Spotify. Actually, I thought it was a really good platform. I'd usually listen to it on iTunes or something like that, but Spotify was actually quite well. So if you're looking for podcasts, everybody has their own little genre, little things that they like to listen, and Bible studies there. So we're on Spotify. If you like Amazon, go to Amazon. If you like iTunes, go to iTunes. But nonetheless, Spotify is a good spot too. And X. X is actually a
X is
really
great.
good video platform. Very impressed, and thinking about doing some spaces on X just for some content there. So we're looking forward to that as well. So very good. Jacob Prash, are you ready?
We are ready.
Let's catch up. Jacob, you and I don't have a new pope, but apparently the Catholic Church does.
Correct.
New pope is chosen. Meet the new pope. Sounds like the old pope. Sounds like a song, right?
Yes.
Will Catholics be fooled again thinking that they got a traditionalist? Tell me a little bit more about the new pope, Leo the 14th.
The traditionalist was marginalized. That was Cardinal Sarah from Guinea in Africa. No, they have a progressivist. Before Pope Francis checked out, he loaded the deck, he stacked the cards, he loaded the dice. 80% of the voting cardinals are his appointees, essentially, and they're going to follow in his footsteps of progressivism into accepting of the homosexual agendas and so forth, the leanings and the interfaith leanings that he was going. This guy from Chicago is somebody who was an Augustinian, like Martin Luther was. He's from the Augustinian order. So to understand him, you have to understand the Augustinian history the way you understood the history of the Jesuits to comprehend his predecessor. He's somebody who will heavily follow the traditions of the Augustinian order. So heavy are those traditions that when even when Luther became a Protestant, he still retained the influences and teachings of Augustine, as did John Calvin. That is how what a powerful grip Augustine's influence has been on both Catholics and Protestants. So he will come from that. I can't explain it theologically, but it is heavily philosophical and Hellenistic. Okay, and it's something that tries to make Augustine was a master at making unbiblical philosophies compatible or tried to make them compatible with biblical doctrine. That is the Augustinian ethos motif. Augustine took things from the Hellenistic world philosophically and tried to make them compatible with biblical doctrine. Augustine was also essential in pulling the church further away from its Hebrew roots and in politicizing it under the influence of his mentor, Ambrose of Milan. He was strongly influenced by a wrong theology that turned the church into a political institution, among other things. A lot could be said about Augustine. I have a book written called The Dilemma of Laodicea, and we talk about much of it in that particular book. This Pope also, he spent a lot of time in Latin America as a bishop in Peru. He's a dual national, even though he's Chicago born. He speaks fluent Spanish and Italian. Unlike many American clergy who can only read Latin, he can probably speak it, which made him more acceptable to the European cardinals.
Mm.
But essentially, Francis loaded the deck before he checked out. He loaded the dice, he marked the cards to make sure there was going to be somebody who was going to follow in his way. There was a television interview with the brother of this Pope in Chicago, his older brother, saying, and his older brother said he's going to follow the way of Francis. He's going to do the same thing. Now, this is going to be very disparaging to traditional Catholics. I don't call them conservatives, but traditional Catholics who wanted somebody who'd move the church more in a traditional direction in response to the way that Francis had deviated from it. They're going to be very disappointed. This person will be a progressivist also. Will he be more progressive? I don't know, but he's certainly not going to backpedal. That would be very, very unlikely. The one good thing is he's already been uncovered in the international media and on the internet for the Roman Catholic practice of the hierarchy protecting pedophile sex criminal clergy at the expense of protecting Catholic children. He is a recognized protector of child molesters. He did this in Chicago at a boys' school with this priest McGrath. He did it in Peru with these two boys at least. Now, these are the cases we know of. He's definitely a pedophile protecting member of the Catholic hierarchy who will protect sex criminals at the expense of not protecting Roman Catholic children. This is his reputation, and it's been exposed. May the Lord destroy his reputation from day one. The real shame and disgrace will be the evangelicals lining up to congratulate him, so-called evangelical clergy lining up to congratulate him. This is absolutely sickening. Why would you congratulate a protector of pedophiles and sex criminals? But that's what he is, and it's known, and that's it. He also was the Augustinian province. He was in charge of all the Augustinians in the American Midwest, but then he became the general, the chief head of the Augustinian order, above the abbots, above everything. He was the absolute international head of the Augustinian order. When you're the head of an order, like the Jesuit general, the Augustinian general, that is a very, very powerful position within the Roman Catholic Church.
That's
he
right.
was also in the dicastery, which governs bishops. and the doctrines that bishops subscribe to. This guy is very much a theocratic politician and a political animal, walking in the way of his predecessor. He's going to be a very bad pope. Or not that there's any good ones. He's going to be a bad one.
Yeah.
People making a big deal of the fact that he's American. It doesn't matter what he is. It doesn't matter what he is. He's an antichrist.
Yeah.
He's,
Well, let me ask you this a couple questions, Jacob. You got into a lot of different subjects, so I'm going to pull back a little bit and give you some. So it's not going to be Donald Trump, right? The American.
no, and it won't be Malachi. It won't be the prophecies of Saint Malachi either, Peter.
Yeah. So it was interesting. People were commenting on the fact that it took 2 days. Now, it's not unprecedented that it took 2 days to get this vote in, but nonetheless, it was quite quick. 2 days, 4 votes. And it reminded me of another guy who had 2 days to, they chose him right away, was John Paul the First. We were talking
Yes.
earlier about Albino Luciani, otherwise known as John Paul the First. And Jacob, you had some interesting comments about that because he only lasted 33 days and he seemed to be very different than the other popes before him. Obviously, this is post Vatican II, but it was unique. It only lasted 33 days, but he left somewhat of a controversy on how he died and what they are reported because there was no autopsy.
The book by Mr. Yallop, In the Name of God, was quite a book, and it caused quite a stir. The Vatican did everything it could to deny it, and to condemn its author and authorship and so forth. He was the pope at the time of the Ambrosione bank scandal.
Yeah.
Ambrosione bank scandal culminating with the Calvi affair. A couple of hundred people were murdered.
Wow.
100 people were murdered. 200.
Like a
the
gangster movie.
secretaries of the bank being thrown out the window and all this kind of stuff. Calvi was found hung under the Blackfriars Bridge in London. It was the Ambrosione bank scandal. The Vatican paid hundreds of millions of dollars to buy its way out of it. We saw the successor of John Paul I, John Paul II from Poland, Cardinal Wojtyla. He was giving refuge in the Vatican to senior clergymen, including the American Bishop Paul Marcinkus, who was the president of the Vatican Bank. He would not hand them over to the European police or the Italian police. He gave them refuge. John Paul II protected people who were under investigation by the civil authorities. He also John Paul II also was responsible for the protection of pedophiles, as was his successor Ratzinger, Benedict. I mean, in that sense, he will follow John Paul II. He'll be a protector of sex criminals, okay, but in terms of his progressivism and the LGBTQ, etc., he'll be a follower of Francis. Again, the reason it only took 2 days was the dice were loaded and the deck was stacked.
108 out of 133 cardinals who can vote were appointed by Francis.
Correct.
And it didn't matter, Jacob, if they were from Asia or Africa or the
Didn't matter. It didn't matter.
They were ideologically in line.
It did not matter.
Yeah.
Because
Jacob,
the biggest donors to the Vatican is called the Peter Pence Collection. And the biggest overall funders of Roman Catholic projects globally. Obviously, it comes from the United States. And there was some discontent. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
yes.
It's very much in the idea of Trump. Well, look, we're paying for NATO. Why are we paying more to defend Europe than Europe does? Well, this kind of thinking may have played something of a role in the conclave. Why has there never been an American pope and we're putting up most of the money for it?
That's right.
That's kind of thinking.
That's a big issue. That's a big issue.
Look, the Vatican runs on money. The Ambrosione bank scandal proves what it's about. It's about money. And I mean corrupt banking, money laundering by criminal syndicates. The Vatican has been a independent country whose banking system practiced laundering with impunity because it was an independent country and it could do what it wanted. And it had religion to give it an artificial cloak of supposed righteousness. Oh, you can't trust the Pope? Who can you trust?
Yeah. No, Jacob, I wanted to ask you, I'll go to David in a minute. He's back. I wanted to ask you this question. It was put out by Eduardo Lopez de Casas, who is a clergy abuse survivor who runs what we call the SNAP. It's
Yeah.
Survivors Network of Abuse by Priests. And he gave the new Pope, Leo the 14th, a very, very low score in terms of a clergy protecting those who have committed abuse toward children. In fact, he called it a very checkered pass for Prevost, who, whether he knew or not, this is what Eduardo Lopez said. If he saw, this speaking of Leo the 14th, and stayed silent, he's not a good priest. And he basically is disqualified from being a pope. Now, this is a man who runs an organization to help survivors of clergy abuse. Why isn't this widely known? Now, hopefully it is, but why isn't this widely known? And why would they go for a guy with so much controversy?
You asking me?
Yeah, yeah. And then I'll go to David. Yeah, I'll go to you and then I'll go to David.
Okay. Again, it is a political cabal. It does not run on anything other than the politics of money and power.
Hmm.
They are, however, concerned about the public image. They
Yes.
are concerned about the public image because there's so many non-practicing Catholics. And
Yes.
they're interested to get people to come back into the Catholic Church. One of the policies of the Vatican has consistently been illegal immigration into the United States. That is why you see them condemning Vance, who converted to Catholicism, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's why you see that this Pope could have, Leo, this new Pope, Prevost from Chicago, echoed Francis condemning Trump.
Yeah.
Because of the decline in religious vocations, as they call it, and the decline in mass attendance, and because of the sex scandals in America, they needed to find another way to replenish the Catholic population of the United States with those who practice it. Bearing in mind that many Hispanics, particularly, many in Latin America, but in the United States, have become Pentecostal or some other kind of evangelical in the last 30 years. So they see this hemorrhage into evangelicism. They have to get new Catholics. Where do you get them? Well, the obvious place to get them is Mexico, Central America, Latin America. That is why they want the liberal border policies. They want to try to re-Catholicize what they've lost in the United States to the degree possible. It is all a political game in finance, in politics, in demographics. Again, many people, many even in the church, believed that John Paul I was murdered when he discovered the realities of the Ambrosio and the bank scandal and the Calvi affair and what was on back of it with the P2 Lodge scandal. Many
Right.
Catholics believe that, but without doubt, if there's no truth in it, then why was John Paul II protecting Paul Marcinkus,
Hmm.
an American bishop from Phoenix, who was the president of the Vatican Bank? Why was he hiding these people in the Vatican and not handing them over to be investigated by the European banking authorities and police? It's all corrupt and it's all hypocritical.
Yeah.
They use religion. You're supposed to trust them and believe them, or you're being unchristian or unkind or a bad Catholic if you face the undeniable realities. This is what they did with the rat lines
Yes.
when they
Yes.
smuggled when they smuggled the Nazi war criminals out of Germany through fascist countries into fascist countries like the Peronistas in Argentina. They smuggled Nazis. You're supposed to forget it and pretend it didn't happen, even
Yeah.
though everybody knows it did happen. How did Eichmann get there? How did Klaus Barbie be hidden in a monastery for 40 years? I mean, you're supposed to overlook all that. The same with the pedophilia. You're supposed to overlook all that. They expect you to overlook it because you're speaking against God if you face the crimes for what they are. I just hope that these Catholic people who see it and who are disillusioned by it and who know what kind of a viper Prevost is, that they will seek the truth of Jesus through the scriptures, like many of us and other people that renounced Roman Catholicism and converted to Christianity. May many Catholics on his account renounce Catholicism and convert to Christianity.
Amen. Amen. Jacob, you and I came from that world. We went to Catholic school. We know what it's like. And boy, what a darkened world
My
especially with
well-intentioned but ignorant mother forced it down my throat.
yeah.
And I thank God I saw through it.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. David, I know you weren't a Catholic, but you obviously know about Catholicism and the religion there. This Pope he's got a checkered past. Obviously, the Snap network of abuse by priests, quite a few things with Chicago and Peru and other places, even St. Thomas the Apostle Catholic Church, and even that young boy that was abuse. Kravich died at 43, unknown causes. But he is an adamant attacking MAGA people, Christians, conservative, even traditional Catholics who support Trump, and he venerates George Floyd. Are they trying to influence the American Catholic Church?
Well, of course, if they can throw up some other misdirection, maybe we can forget about their abuse of children. This is part of it. You know, when you think about, like, he mentioned John Paul II, but he left out cardinal law that had been also brought over by John Paul II to the Vatican, promoted, and given a big role in the burial of John Paul II. But yet he was 1 to 2 days from being arrested there in Boston.
Got him
Wow.
out of the town. He was promoted to be the archpriest
Yeah.
of Santa Maria Maggiore, where Pope Francis is buried.
Yep. And so look, what they've done to people. I lived in Chicago. I saw how Catholic it was. I also lived in Pittsburgh, which is very Catholic. I always said I went where the fishing was good. And I got to visit some of the reliquaries, St. Michael, St. Anthony's there in Pittsburgh, a mile or two from my house, largest reliquary outside of the Vatican. What is a reliquary? It's a place of dead men's bones, and it looks like a coffin on the inside. And I always would take people there. Said, if you want to see what Catholicism is like, this is it. It's a coffin. And so, but I saw what the pedophilia did to young men. Uh, they have an Order of Marion over in Steubenville, right outside of Pittsburgh. And a lot of these guys came over and taught in the Catholic schools, and they abuse young men. One, I had two that I worked a lot with. One put a gun to his head because he couldn't handle it no more. But one went further and found and finally got himself right with the Lord after abuse of drugs and the family problems and all sorts of things. But he finally got it right. So God was merciful to him, and he's now a Christian. So
Praise the Lord.
happy. But I mean, I've seen the dark side of Roman Catholicism, and there's nothing good there. I mean, but what people do with Catholics is they always say, well, it's not all of them.
Right.
Well, but it's every country.
The institution, yeah.
It's every diocese in America successfully sued. So it's not all of them. Well, that's what they want you to believe, but every diocese in America has been sued. Ireland, Italy, everywhere. Africa, abuse, everywhere. France, wherever Roman Catholicism is, abuse of people follows.
Not a few bad apples, it's a rotten barrel.
It's a rotten barrel. Yeah.
There's no saving it.
Yeah. That's a side
Jay's
note.
got something. Jay's got something.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
I just wanted to add what this Pope really speaks to me about is the fact that I think we're going to see, especially with considering how we've become the society that is going to basically be progressive. I think the Catholic Church is going to go further progressive to the point that they're going to say, if you're not in ecumenical lockstep, goose step with us, you have a fundamentalist view of Christianity that is unacceptable to these times.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see a partnership of government and the church. It's Americans like to say there needs to be a separation, but with the way the Catholic Church is now pandering to one side of the aisle, I think they might start forgoing that and saying, no, need to make peace with the idea of church and state and bring them back together, because this is about, acceptance. This is about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
To
We
make
have
the world a
a
better place.
religious institution, yes.
Yeah, to make
And
just
also,
a side
Marco,
note.
there was
Yeah.
they were saying there's been growth within the American Catholic Church, because not only is it they're coming from, illegals are coming, but there seems to be under Generation Z, people are starting to go back and find faith. They don't know exactly what type of faith, but they're trying to find something. And so usually people like to go back to their roots and stuff. So they are seeing some growth in the Catholic Church in America and some other places, but mostly like what Jacob said is in where the gospel is being preached, they are losing people. But in America with the apostasy, it's
Yeah.
easy for
Yeah.
it's easy for people to go into
Yeah.
Roman Catholicism.
Yeah, this is the fruit of Satan's servant Chuck Colson. He was a man who worked for the
Yes.
devil. He was on Satan's payroll. Um, he
Gave prison ministry, gave his whole prison ministry to the Catholic Church.
knew some, but also, and his wife was a Catholic, but he was into that Catholics and evangelicals together. Do not
Yep.
preach the gospel to Catholic people; they're already Christians. And you had J.I. Packer and these other people. Bill Bright from Campus Crusades went along with it.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
the betrayal of the gospel orchestrated by Colson. Colson had been a liar and a deceiver for Nixon. Then he became a liar and a deceiver for the Vatican. He was definitely an arch agent of Satan. The other thing you see with this present Pope is, notice he was not talking about Jesus. He began talking about walking with Mary and
Yep.
praising Mary. He's in the same idolatry, Mariolatry, and necromancy.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
That is his false. That is his false Christianity. False Christianity. You
Yeah.
know, God says, "I will not give my glory to another." There is one intercessor between God and man, Jesus the
Praise
righteous.
Jesus.
Jesus is the only redeemer.
Yeah.
Again, I pointed out at the church where Cardinal Law was the archpriest when they had to promote him to get him out of Boston, and where Pope Francis is buried, Santa Maria Maggiore in Roma, they have a crucifix in front of it. Huge church with an image of Jesus hanging on one side and of Mary being crucified on the other. This is the mentality of this Pope. He worships a female cult deity, which
Yeah.
he imagines to be Mary.
Yeah. It's
Pagan
basically,
idolatry. It's
yeah,
pagan idolatry. And
divine
any
feminism.
evangelical who in any way accepts this guy is a shame and a disgrace to the cause of Christ.
Yeah. Some of his doctrine, Jacob, I'm going to go back to Prevost, is to work and enlarge the big tent church, and
Yep.
let everybody come in, democratize the church, meaning that now you can basically bring atheists, bring any form of other faith into it, change the church.
Homosexuality will grow, Marco.
Yeah, well, that's a given.
No,
That's a given for sure.
we're losing our children. We're losing our children. So what they'll do, they'll allow people to love their children, not with a biblical love of telling the truth,
Yeah.
and winning them to Christ, but allow them to continue in their sin.
Yeah,
But
and he definitely wants the ecumenism. He definitely wants the ecumenism. Now, in the ceremony, Jacob brought up the ceremony. He talked more about Mary, exalted Mary more than Jesus. I think he mentioned Jesus a couple of times, but he prayed the Hail Mary, our Blessed Mother walks with us. She helps us, intercedes for us with her love. I never read that in the Bible, but and then Jacob, I'm going to ask you this: he offered a plenary indulgence, which people were asking about it because they obviously people are not Catholic and they're born again Christians, but they never were Catholic. And when he appeared in the balcony, at the Urbi et Orbi, the world and the city, it was a blessing. He issued an indulgence. Basically, all the sins and the punishment of the sin can be forgiven. Can you explain a little bit more about that indulgence and how popes can just do it without any concern for biblical accuracy?
Indulgences began as a racket. to finance the construction projects of the Renaissance. Okay? They had no biblical basis for it. That is one of the reasons the Catholic Church canonized the Apocrypha, because there is a verse that says it's good to pray for the dead. Okay? There, it obviously, it was a Jewish book written in Greek, and that meant pray that the Messiah would come, so the souls in the bosom of Abraham could enter paradise. But they used it very differently. The Dominicans became the main indulgence merchants, going around when a coin into the box rings, a soul from purgatory springs. And they had these guys like Tetzel and these preachers who'd go around to the peasants and the serfs who were impoverished. And to get money out of them, they would say, your mother's in hell, please, begging her children, her son, get me out of here, and all this. This is how they built St. Peter's. This is how they financed the construction of the Vatican. This is what they did. It's based on something they call a treasury of merits. They claim that the people that the popes have canonized as saints had extra grace they didn't need. And it's in some kind of a treasure house. So the Pope has control of this treasury of merits, and he can take the grace that these saints didn't need and give it to you when you buy a Mass card or do something else to get your mother out of purgatory. The whole thing was a racket and is a racket. They have a door to increase tourism into the Vatican. They have a door they open every 25 years.
Yep.
That if you walk through it, you get an indulgence. It's a racket, and it is one of the main things that precipitated the Reformation. Luther saw Tetzel, and the Dominicans were preaching, you can violate Mary, sexually violate Mary, the mother of Christ, if you have the right price for an indulgence. This set Luther ablaze. And of course, they condemned Luther. Now, Luther didn't end too well, but he certainly began right by telling the truth about indulgences. And they still exist. People buy Mass cards to get indulgences for dead people. What can you do for the dead? Nothing. But that is their teaching, the treasury of merits.
Yep.
Also,
Exactly.
this Pope is synodial. He wants to put more power into the magisterium of the church, meaning he wants to make it appear to be less monarchical, appear to be. It won't be, but it will appear to be. And in that magisterium, he will have voices that represent homosexuality, lesbianism, theological liberalism, anything that is going to advance the institution itself.
Yep.
His interfaith emphasis is very much pontifical with the Roman emperors, the bridge builder between all religions.
That's right. That's exactly what he said.
That is absolutely preparing the way for the Antichrist. The Antichrist, the false prophet, will come in the character of the pontifical religions of Rome. You can have any religion you want as long as you acknowledge the pontiff as the bridge builder. Now, he's not the first pope to do this, but he's doing it.
Yeah. He actually mentioned it, Jacob, on his speech that he's a bridge builder. He wants to build bridges to everybody. So big tent,
this is pure Antichrist.
big bridges.
The real disgrace is going to be these stupid evangelicals, false shepherds of God's people.
Yep.
Who are going to accept this guy as being of the Lord.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. Jacob, we're going to go into another subject here. We'll pivot into India and Pakistan, and the fighting keeps escalating. And this week we had airstrikes into the Kashmir area on the Pakistani side. And of course, the Pakistani side is also attacking through drones. So there's been some major fog in the war, meaning that we don't really ultimately know all the casualties. Some figures are 20, 30, 40, 50 from both sides. We know that Turkey is getting involved on the Pakistani side, helping them.
Yes.
China is helping them take down some of the drones from India. But this is escalating, and I know this has happened before. It all stems back, of course, to when it split. You know, India split after the British Empire. But this particular fight began a couple weeks ago when terrorists went into the area of Pahalgam, which is in Kashmir, killed 26 Hindus, men. They let the wives live. They killed the men. And then it began this hunt for the terrorists, which Pakistan seems to be hiding and keeping them from being arrested or being taken out. And here we have the conflict. And because of the nuclear capabilities of both nations, this is getting to become a big problem. Jacob, your comments on the war?
Okay, there are three or four aspects that have to be understood to understand what's happening. This is at least the sixth armed border conflict between India and Pakistan since the partition of India and Pakistan that was implemented under the guidance of Lord Mountbatten, the uncle of King Charles today, who was assassinated by the IRA. Since the partition, there have been at least 6 armed conflicts. This is the latest. Only this time, you're talking about a nuclear-armed Pakistan and a nuclear-armed India. That fear of escalation to a nuclear conflict. Their own version of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That is one problem. The second problem is the China factor. China, with its Belt and Road Initiative, and even before that, had a relationship with China, where they've now built a port, a warm water port in Pakistan, built by China, a highway. Probably they're building pipelines, but certainly a rail line north of Pakistan through the Hindu Kush area into Western China, in order to circumvent the Malacca Straits, which the American military can easily shut off if it wanted to. So it's trying to circumvent it. So don't forget there's the China card. China and India are in conflict over the border and over the water rights of the Brahmaputra River, which is going to be a major, major factor. So you can't just look at it as India and Pakistan. It is India and China. China's population is growing. China's going to lose 600 million people. India is now the most populous country in the world. It is semi-democratic, it's not a democracy, but semi-democratic. It is English-speaking. It's the biggest English-speaking country in the world. And it has a big technological base in Bangalore of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. It is the challenge to China. China's fear is that as China overtook Japan as the economic dynamo and industrial dynamo of Asia, India is the threat to taking it over from China. So you have to look at this conflict in light of the situation with China. If you were to look at the history of it, it is based on religion. That's what is incredibly interesting. Under Mahatma Gandhi, India wanted independence. India agreed to back Germany and to give British troops to fight the Japanese, although there were some Indians who fought with the Japanese, but to fight with the British and the Australians against the Japanese in the Pacific, and to fight with the British in Italy. And they fought in Italy as part of the British Army, the Royal Army. Gandhi agreed to do that if Britain would give them independence after the war. Churchill opposed this, but they got what they wanted, and Lord Mountbatten presided over the transition. It didn't work. India and Pakistan didn't want to be one country because of religion. The Muslims wanted their own country. Those Hindus like Gandhi who agreed to the partition, that is why Gandhi was assassinated by other Hindus. These peace-loving Hindus, they killed Mahatma Gandhi because he agreed to the partition. There was a massive exchange of populations between India and Pakistan that took place in the late 1940s. The Pakistanis, the Muslims left India and went to Pakistan, and people who were Hindus and Sikhs, they came east into the Punjab area and into Kashmir area particularly. Now, this happens on the back of the ancient conflicts almost between the Sikh religion and the Muslims. Sikhs carry a dagger, like the Scots have a skidoo in their sock. The Sikhs have the same kind of thing, representing their wars against Islam. Sikhism is monotheistic Hinduism, basically. But always the enemy of Muslims, particularly as well as Hindus, but more so Muslims. So India was not what it is now. India under the British was Pakistan, was Bangladesh, originally called East Pakistan. It was Sri Lanka, then called Ceylon. It was Burma. Burma was part of India. Mandalay and all this. Coming back to Mandalay, the poems of Rudyard Kipling and things like this. Then there were the Himalayan countries like Bhutan and Sikkim and Nepal. That was all India. They wanted independence from the British, but once they got it, they fragmented and turned against each other in many cases. Not only the Muslims against the Hindus and Sikhs, but East Pakistan, now called Bangladesh, seceded from Pakistan.
Yeah, 1971.
Pakistan tried to wipe them out. If you remember the concert for Bangladesh by George Harrison and the Beatles when he brought Bob Dylan and Eric Clapton and all these pop stars to do this big concert in New York, I was at it. It was because of the starvation and genocide happening in Bangladesh. Ravi Shankar, although a Hindu, was from Bangladesh. He was a friend of George Harrison. And this really popularized the cause among youth in the West because of the influence of the Beatles and so forth. It became a big, big mess. Now something is happening. Bangladesh is an impoverished country, plagued by monsoons and typhoid, and plagued.
Bloody.
If the flooding is incredible, but it has begun to industrialize, and it is taking away the textile and clothing industry from Pakistan. The Pakistan economy is in serious trouble. The economy of Bangladesh is, at least for the time, growing. So Pakistan is at odds with Bangladesh once again. The Muslims can't even live in peace with each other. You had a genocidal mass famine. They use famine as a weapon against other Muslims in the war between Pakistan and Bangladesh. You've had strife between the Tamil Tigers and the Ceylonese down in Ceylon in Sri Lanka. And then you've got problems in India itself, where Sikhs assassinated Rajiv Gandhi and his mother, where you've got 160 million Muslims. There are more Muslims in India than in any other country of the world other than Indonesia. And they don't get along with the BJP, with the fundamentalist Hindus, not at all. And then you have conflict against the Sikhs, against the Muslims, against the Hindus. They're all at odds with each other, including the Muslims against other Muslims. This is a big, big mess. Under the British, it was sequestered.
Yes.
The British were gone. It exploded. But the big explosion is still to come. And now you have Hindus who will push the button because they believe in reincarnation. They'll come as a Brahmin. And you have Muslims who believe in being Shahadi. They will die in a jihad to get their 72 virgins. These people are now nuclearly armed. It is a very, very dangerous situation. I'd also point out that the Memorial Church in the Punjab is halfway between Lahore, Pakistan, and Amritsar, India. We're right on the Pakistan border. So please pray for our people. It's a big church. We got a lot of people in it. We've had opposition from the Sikhs there already, but our church is literally right on the border in the conflict zone. If anything happens, our people will be right in the middle of the danger area. So please pray for the Memorial Church on the India-Pakistan border. But this is how that's the history of it, and that's what it amounts to. It is a religious as well as ethnic conflict.
No, no doubt. David, let's go over to you real quick. Your thoughts on the war and would it escalate or we had the same issue in 2024. There were some terrorist activity on the border and both sides did whatever they needed to do and everyone kind of went back to normal. But this one seems a little bit different and the talk of nuclear exchange has come up probably more uncomfortably the last few days than any other time that I can remember, maybe since well, I don't know, 70s. There was a conflict in 71, but it wasn't this bad. Conflict in 2012, it wasn't this bad. This one seems to be escalating.
It certainly does, and I would hate to for that big bang that Jacob talked about being a nuclear bang.
Yeah,
So it's terrible, and and so we definitely it does seem really escalating, and it is a little bit different than the other ones because now you have all these different allies of the various states adding fuel to the fire and ammo to the supply chain. So you have China, their
yeah.
defense industry went up because of this. Um, of course, Turkey, they
Turkey's
get
involved. Yep.
by, so and then you've got some problems here, and let's hope not. I there was a book that I read, I think in the late 70s. I really liked it on this. It was called Freedom at Midnight. It was it read very easily and everything, and explained minute by minute and hour by hour the events that were happening. It was really a good book. I would recommend if anybody wants to know about the split that Jacob just went through and everything, and who was involved and everything. And the book goes down to even individual people and not just the leaders. So that was pretty interesting. And my friend Don Nix um, from Memphis produced the concert for Bangladesh, so I didn't get to go, but Jacob did. So, but it's they're if they're industrializing, that's good for them because they have been when they first were created, it was always monsoon, people dying by the thousands because of the flooding and everything.
Last year, there was also conflict between Bangladesh and Hindus for the first time.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's a terrible thing because of religious hatred, and you wonder why people are leaving religion. May they all find Jesus. And Marco, I would ask for prayers because you and I are both talking with Mark about going there. This late November was what the latest that Mark said. So may God bring peace to that area and
Definitely
watch
at the
over
times
our
like this.
orphans.
Yeah, at a time like this, where there's wars, rumors of wars everywhere,
Yep.
there seems to be no short of that. Jake, I'm going back to you about Pakistan, and in my thought was this when I was writing some of my notes today. Pakistan is really just an artificial entity. It was just a British invention to try to kind of bring some kind of peace in that area. Now it's been 77 years, almost the same amount of time as Israel became a state in
Yep,
1948, and it introduced terrorism in that area,
yep.
not only against Baluchistan, against the people there, against the Sindh, against the Pashtun people, against the Kashmir people, and of course Bangladesh, as you mentioned earlier. So ever since then, it's just been Islamic terrorism. They even attacked Afghanistan, which is also
Yes.
a Muslim country. So again, just like the Palestinian idea of an entity there that was artificially created, there's never been any kind of Palestinians in the sense of what they describe them today. The same thing in this area in the Islamic influence. So, talk to me a little bit about the what you see.
After the Second World War,
Yeah.
you had two major partitions that saw an exchange of populations. One was what happened under Nehru and Gandhi in India
Yep.
Yes.
that created Pakistan and East Pakistan, today called Bangladesh. That was one, okay? And that conflict endures to this day, okay? In India, you still have a big Muslim population, okay? Now let's look at the other one, the UN partition of the Holy Land, okay? Israel was created as a nation. The French Empire collapsed in North Africa after the Second World War. Okay? It was only the Berbers and the Arabs that were left. The French from Algeria, from Tunisia, even Morocco, they left. Okay? They left back to Europe or to Quebec, Canada. Some of them went to Canada. What happened to the Jews who were there? Moroccan Jews. Well, a few of the educated ones went to Europe. Most of them came to Israel. The Jewish populations of Tunisia and these other countries, they left North Africa and came to Israel. When the so-called Palestinian Arabs violated the partition and attacked Israel, the United Arab Command told them to leave Israel. We're going to drive the Jews into the sea, and then he can go back. Well, they lost the war, and now they couldn't go back. So you had an exchange of population against the background of war in Israel, and you have the same thing in India.
Yep.
But you, the same as you have a big Muslim population inside India, that is a thorn in India's side and a pebble in India's boot. Israel's got the same thing. It's got a big Arab Muslim population. Now, the Circassian Muslims and the Bedouin Muslims and Christian Arabs and obviously Druzy people, they're all right. But Israeli Arabs who are Muslim are divided. The majority of them don't like Israel. India's got the same problem as Israel, which is one of the reasons you see this friendship between Israel and India. They're exchanging intelligence information. The Mossad is providing intelligence to India. They are also cooperating in high-tech engineering. Israel is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and Bangalore is the Silicon Valley of Southern Asia. So you have now technological cooperation of a considerable scale going on in Bangalore in cooperation with Israel. So you have a rapprochement between Israel and India that had not been there. Traditionally, even under the Congress Party, the governments of India were not pro-Israeli, but the realities of the common threat of Islam have made them bedfellows of convenience, both in terms of high-tech industry, but also military intelligence cooperation. That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's why there's such a good relationship with Israel and India, isn't it? They see themselves as sort of a kindred in terms of what's going
Israel's
on.
got a lot of Muslims living in it,
Yep.
and India has a lot of Muslims living in it, and it's the same kind of problem.
Yep. And then they both became, independent, and then one's became a state, obviously, around the same time. So it is a very similar parallels, and you have
That
good
is correct.
relationship between the two of them. Jacob, talk to me a little bit about the Trump Netanyahu rift. Going into Israel now, the U.S. is pursuing a East plans and even a nuclear plan deal with Saudi Arabia without Israel. Tell me a little bit more.
I do not believe it affects the relationship between the United States and Israel or the support of the Trump government for Israel. But there is something of a rift with Mr. Netanyahu personally. The reasons for this are probably threefold. The first reason for this is that Netanyahu is basically like Golda Meir, an American Israeli. He speaks American English, was educated at MIT. He lived his youth in the United States. But so is his political enemy, Bennett, Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
San Francisco. Parents are from San Francisco. Lived in San Francisco as a kid. Okay. The United States has alternatives to Netanyahu on the political right. There is a belief in Israel that the Americans are aware of, that what happened in 1973 with the
Yes.
surprise attack that shouldn't have happened, Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan found a scapegoat in General David Lazar and blamed him for everything to try to save their own necks politically. actually, Moshe Dayan joined the Likud. He left the Labor Party and joined the Likud to save his own neck politically. Um, and again, you had an American prime minister of Israel, like you do now, an Americanized. Okay, you're to blame. It happened on your watch. Now, during the war, okay, we can't fight about politics. You have to be united as a nation in face of the common enemy. But
Yes.
once the war is over, who was responsible for this? You understand?
Yeah.
That question is being asked in Israel, and it's even being asked not just on the left, it's being asked on the political right.
Good,
Okay,
yeah.
that's one issue. The second that very few people are talking about, but everyone in the Pentagon, the State Department, and the CIA knows, is the breach of good trust by Israel under Netanyahu of the F-35. Israel asked for these something called ULSA codes, which the Americans gave to no other country that bought the F-35, and Israel said, we need it, we need it, we need it, to modify these jets for our own uses. Well, they began to produce software that upgraded the F-35. They had very good engineers and technicians, but not as good as they thought, because there was something with low frequency radar that the F-35 was good at evading. But with the Israeli modifications, Russian built radar for the S-400 were able to detect the signatures of the F-35s. Next thing you know, this stealth technology was not as stealthy, and how to outmaneuver it was appearing in trade journals published in Russian and in Chinese. And it was Israeli fault. It was Israel's fault. Now they had good scientists, good engineers. They actually upgraded it beyond what it was, but they blundered big time. And now the other countries have bought the F-35, Italy, Denmark, Britain, and say, what's going on? You know, can we rely on this aircraft the same as we did? We paid all this money for it. And it's because of the Israelis. There is a resentment. It is the same as the Americans have always kept the F-22 under lock and key and not shared it with anybody. That is likely to happen with the F-47. Israel's not likely to get it the way it is now. Israel behaved very badly. At the Navy Team Air Base, built by the Americans, there were signs, Israeli personnel only, because they were doing modifications without giving the technology to the Americans, without sharing. So there's a distrust of Netanyahu. Now, nobody's blaming Israel as a nation, or even the Israeli government or military, but it was Netanyahu. There is a growing distrust of him. That's the second reason. Obviously, there were other issues domestically of people who didn't like him, but that did not affect the Americans so much. The third factor is the United States is shafting Saudi Arabia at the moment because the United States are in a oil price war. It has forced Saudi Arabia and OPEC. It has brought the price of oil way down, okay? Saudi Arabia is now being hurt by the Americans, okay? The Americans are Trump is doing everything he can to force the Saudi Arabians to the negotiating table to expand the so-called Abrahamic Accords, okay? Listen, you want your economy to improve, you want more money for oil, you've got to play ball with us because we're a producer now again. What Biden did is undone. We are going to drill, okay? So the price of oil has come way down, okay? And there's nothing OPEC can do about it. Secondly, that is one factor. So they're pressuring Saudi Arabia economically, okay? But they're also pressuring Israel to come to make this accord.
Right.
To make this accord. The big thing that troubles Israel, however, is not that. The big thing that's troubling Israel is, although the Israeli attacks or counterattack on the airport at Sana'a in Yemen. That was coordinated with the United States Navy and Air Force for sure. When the Israelis wiped the airport out after the ballistic missile was fired at Ben Gurion Airport.
Gorian Airport, yes.
Right. The Israelis retaliated, and that was carried out not in concert, but certainly in coordination with the Americans. Okay, the Americans are talking to the Houthis are denying it. What Israel is afraid of is that Trump will negotiate on his own.
Right.
Iranians.
Right.
Yeah.
That is what they're afraid of. You know, Mr. Netanyahu has to bear some of the responsibility for what happened on the October 7th attacks. He was the prime minister. He can find scapegoats the way Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan did, but he was the prime minister. The buck has to stop with him ultimately. That is the first thing that happened. Secondly, the Israelis have done things in the past that the Americans saw as a betrayal of trust. One of which was that affair with the American Jew who was, sorry?
The submarine one?
Yeah, what was his name again? They locked him up for like 35 years. Yeah. In an American prison, and they wouldn't let him out. He was locked up for 35 years. I forget his name. That was a breach of trust. The Israelis tried to say it was an independent intelligence unit, not the Mossad. It was a renegade operation within the Israeli intelligence community. That's what they tried to say. And they gave evidence to the Americans to convict Pollard. That was his name, Pollard.
Oh, that's it.
The Israelis actually gave the Americans evidence to imprison Pollard for a major part of his life, to preserve the relationship. But it was it was a breach of trust. It was a breach of trust. The attack on the Liberty is seen by some people as a breach of trust. It is more likely that the Johnson administration was in on it. Okay. But the idea that the whole thing was a mistake is nonsense. They wanted to think, Johnson wanted people to think that the Egyptians were doing it, that the Egyptians did it, who were in league with the Soviets. Okay, that is a very good possibility. So it's not so much the Liberty affair, but the Pollard affair was a breach of trust. This F-35, although it's been played down in the press, is another major breach of trust with very bad consequences. And again, Netanyahu is the Rosh Hashanah, the prime minister. So the Americans are looking at the possibility of other alternatives to Netanyahu. Bennett might be another one because, like Netanyahu and like Golda Meir, he's culturally American. You know what I mean? Someone educated, lived in the States, speaks American English, and so forth. Those are the factors. But you're not going to find anybody really in the mainstream media or even online, too many people online telling you the whole truth. They go to great lengths to keep it sequestered.
David Lister, we'll go to you. Do you think Trump will move ahead and get these deals done, even if Israel's not involved? I don't know if the Senate would go along with it, but he's got the Saudis. He's going to visit them next week. He's going to go to the Middle East. Obviously, as Jacob Tupp pointed out, he still loves Israel, has a relationship with Israel. Maybe the prime minister will need to be switched in that regard. But what do you think Trump's main goal is here in the Middle East? Abraham Accords, pushing deals with Saudi Arabia, getting things done there. But Israel is sort of on the back burner at the moment.
All of the above with him.
Yeah.
Trump wants to, I truly believe Trump sees himself as a great peacemaker. I think he would love to be seen as a peacemaker. You see this with the Ukraine war. You see this here in the Middle East before. So I can see him wanting to have the Abraham Accords expanded. But, and he needs, I think he just signed $100 billion buy or sell to the Saudi Arabians. So that's another big
$100 million.
play. 100 billion. And so that's a pretty good purchase. And more so when we're dropping all of our F-18s into the water over there. So people haven't seen it. We've lost 3 jets off of 1 carrier. Some people think they're being flown to Israel, but I don't know. So I think that he needs to keep the chess pieces moving to keep his opponents off guard.
Yes.
That's what he's doing. And so, but he would love to be able to come down to a place where he can get a peace accord in the Middle East. He's even talking to Syria now and to that leader there, and trying to use him against the Turks and against the Hezbollah. And so it's quite interesting when you step back and seeing what he's doing and how he's negotiating. He's got all these lawyers and law firms negotiating trade deals, negotiating here, negotiating there, and he's not doing really well on the Russian front right now in Ukraine, even though he got the mineral rights.
Yeah.
You still have to get in there, and it could take some time to start opening those mines and being able to ship everything. But if you've got a person that's an antagonist, such as Russia, well, they can keep you can get the minerals out of the ground, but you got to get them on ships and get them out of the Black Sea. So
Yeah,
you can have some problems there.
Don't forget, his name is that he's a businessman. He postures.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Saudi Arabia. I'm talking to Persia, to Iran. He postures that way to make Israel want to make concessions. If he does something, he wants Saudi Arabia to make concessions. He postures. He presents a high-risk stakes with tariffs, with anything. He maximizes the potential ramifications of something to the brink of disaster in order to get people to negotiate. He does not think like a diplomat or a politician. He thinks like a businessman.
Yeah, and he's been quite effective. Jacob, I did want to ask you, from his enemies, the left here in America, the leftist, democratic, Marxists. 2 ladies are on the news very, very highly this week, not in a good way. Fannie Willis, Letitia James. Any comment on that? Because they certainly. I mean, I was going to ask you about Crockett, but anyway, she's on another podcast with.
She's also under some attorney. Crockett is also under some investigation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Willis and James, what do you think?
Willis has got problems, and James has got bigger problems. I pray to God for their indictment and conviction. I pray to God. But this ripoff, New York is the highest tax state in the union. It's like California. People are being ripped off, and the taxpayer is being expected to put up $10 million to defend her, not as Attorney General, but for crimes she's alleged to have committed as Attorney General. Taxpayers are getting the bill for it. This woman is an outrage. I pray to God the Lord brings her down and that she's convicted. The evidence plainly points to her guilt.
Yeah.
Plainly.
Yeah.
She uses legalese. Legalese, when you say baseless, when a lawyer says baseless, what they mean is, I believe in court, the body of evidence you present and the counter evidence we present will mean you can't get a conviction. That's what they mean. It doesn't mean that there's no evidence. It just means they think in the strategy of a trial, you won't get a conviction. That's what the term baseless means. She's not denied anything. I'd like to see her subpoenaed by the Congress and say, look, you've filed litigation against the U.S. government with 18 other attorney generals. We need to determine if you are the legal attorney general of Virginia. Now tell us, did you actually consummate your marriage to your father, or is it a scam to commit the felony of mortgage fraud.
Yeah.
I'd love somebody like to ask her that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Did you see the heckler that was in New York who basically interrupted her speech and basically said, would you apologize to the American people for what you did to Trump with his baseless allegations? And how does it feel to go to prison for mortgage fraud in your investigation? And they escorted the guy out, but people began to applaud him. She's a very unpopular, and as more people know about what she's doing and what she did, uh,
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable.
Most of the people on the internet calling her out are black people. That's what's interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt.
Or educated
I
black
don't
people.
know if you guys saw that Trump got his 400 plus million back.
Did he?
Yeah, the judge ruled his favor, and so, but nobody's reporting it. Just quietly went away. He had no. The guy came out against her case, the judge.
What's really interesting is,
Rightly so.
whether you like Megyn Kelly or not, she is getting more views than MSNBC and CNN.
Yeah. No doubt. Jacob, I wanted to ask you this because of there's some things obviously against Jewish people in Israel, and it's even more in Europe that they've coming against them. And one thing that's interesting was the Eurovision thing. Before we get into the economy, because the European Union is trying to do something against Israel. But in terms of the Eurovision, of course, this is a contest that they do, and Israel's
Yeah, it's a big deal in Europe.
yeah, Ireland is trying to get Israel out of there. Other countries are trying to get Israel out of participating in the Eurovision, but it's in Basel, Switzerland, which is an
Yeah,
interesting thing. And I went back in history and I said, well, that's the first Zionist Congress was in 1897 with
it is.
Herzl.
It
Uh,
is.
what a turn of events is it? Can you comment on the Basel, Switzerland?
Basel,
What happened there?
Switzerland is the capital city of the European pharmaceutical industries. The Siba, Geigy, they're all there. Hochmeier, Organ, and I believe they're all there. Um, the railway station, you've got the Gare on the French side and the Bahnhof on the German side.
Huh.
In the same building, you have a German section in Germany, you
Uh-huh.
have a French section in France, and a Swiss section in Switzerland. It's where three countries come together, and they
Wow.
literally converge in the railway station, where you get trains to everywhere. In Europe, from this, the railway station is three different nations. The borders of three countries are inside the station. Basel is a place like no other. It's very important in Christian history. It's the burial place of Erasmus of Rotterdam, who precipitated the Reformation. And as you point out, it was the location of the first Zionist Congress. Okay. The Eurovision Song Contest is to be held there this year. Geneva and Zurich, and to a degree Bern, seems to eclipse the importance of Basel as a city. But in Europe, it's seen on a par with any other major city in Europe for commercial reasons largely, and geographical reasons, where three countries come together. It's going to be a very big Eurovision because of where it's located. Where you got France and Germany, and it's going to be in Switzerland. It's going to be a very big Eurovision. But the left-wing governments of Ireland, both obviously Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, are all anti-Zionist. And
Yeah.
they're all against the Irish patriots who are trying to stand up to Islamic immigration. They're all pro-Islamic immigration, like Merkel was. Okay? Therefore, they're anti-Israel and
Israel.
Roman Catholic, which predisposes them to anti-Semitism. This is what's happening. But it's not only Ireland, there's other countries.
Yeah.
You'll see in Ireland, I've seen rock concerts in Ireland, people dancing with Palestinian flags.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
there are other Irish people who rip down Palestinian flags, but they're being called Nazis.
Yeah, yeah, extreme right wing. Jacob, sticking with Europe, the European Union, they're going to review the trade with Israel, the trade deals that they have with Israel because of what they're doing, what Israel's being blamed to be doing in Gaza, and obviously the human rights violation and all the crisis that they claim that's going on there. So they're going to go after Israel. Obviously, it's not just the Eurovision. At the same time, Europe is launching in basically tariff wars against the United States. and digital currencies to their citizens by October. So this is all coming to play in Europe. Seems to be the epicenter for a lot of nefarious things. But we'll start with Israel, move to the U.S. tariffs, and then you can talk about the digital currency and digital act services that they tried to pass.
Concerning Israel, it's always a Genesis 12:3 situation. I'll bless those who bless and curse those who curse. And it's an Obadiah verse 15 situation. You shaft Israel on behalf of the Muslim nations, you're going to get, the Muslim nations are going to do the same thing to you they did to Israel. Read Obadiah 15. That's what's happening. It's just because of their post-Judeo-Christian godlessness
Hmm.
and political scheming. And secondly, because you've got such large Islamic populations in so many countries in Europe, Germany and France particularly, but all of them, that they want the Muslim vote now. The Islamic vote has become important to the left-wing political parties because you have a reaction, like the ADF in Germany, like Marie Le Pen in France, in Great Britain with Starmer. They all have to placate the Muslims to get the Islamic vote now to keep power. Much like they want illegal immigrants to be able to vote in the United States, so the Democratic Party can keep power. It's the same game. It's a power game by the European left.
Yes.
But I have no doubt that what we are seeing is Daniel chapter 2.
Hmm.
And there's a fragmentation. Poland is going one way, and Western Europe is going another. The iron does not stick to the clay.
Yeah, they're actually trying to sue 5 different countries in the European Union because they're not going along with, well, one would be the digital euro, and the other one is the digital act services. Let me pull up the countries that are not going to be on it, or at least the lawsuit from Brussels is Spain, Cyprus, Poland, Portugal, Czechia, are all failing, the European Union says, to keep up their national digital services, which basically comes with the digital euro, digital ID. So a fragmentation. You're right, Jacob. Fragmentation, and this is only 5 of them. I would imagine the Eastern European countries, like
Yep.
if Romania gets their conservative president.
Hungary's another one to watch.
Which one?
Hungary.
Oh, Hungary, yeah, with Orban, yeah, with Viktor Orban, and in Romania, if they actually let this guy run, Poland, obviously, that's in the balance. We should ask Christoph about that one. Where's that going to go? But David Lister, your thoughts on where Europe is just going more draconian, more control, and more digital, and they actually even in the UK, which is not exactly EU. They're also going into end-to-end encryption. They're going after end-to-end encryption of messages. So not safe to send any messages there, as we know in the UK.
Not in the UK. It looks like it's not only going digital, but going Islam. The invasion seems like it's overthrown England almost, the UK, as well as Europe. So with the digitalization of the money, which they want, because everybody's trying to get out front. Trump wants to get out front and be the digital currency.
Yep.
Same thing with Europe. Everybody wants to try to be first, and kind
There is,
of
there is an advantage to first being a first mover. There is an advantage to that.
money would flow in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not a good
that's what
advantage.
happened.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it.
No, no, you
Yeah.
know, when we keep thinking about it, we saw Jay's new passport today that's fully digital and everything. I know I've recently had to take my passport to get into another country, and I had to pull it over a scanner on my computer, and it read the chips that are in it. There was 3 of them. So, so we're all seeing this, and my mind goes back to 2019, as does Jacob's. So it's got stuff in it now, but we're all going to strive to get towards Jay.
Yeah. Jay, it's
And
supposed to
you
be.
too.
Yeah, yeah, it's
You,
supposed to be we'll switch gears here with the real ID that's being promoted now as of May 7th. You need it to travel domestically, and it is a real ID. According to Christy Gnomes, this is our conservative government, semi-quasi conservative government here. It's supposed to keep you safe because of all the problems that we have domestically, internally, and illegal immigration and gangs. It's supposed to keep you safe. Do you feel safe today?
oh,
I,
I always feel secure when the government tells me I'll be secure. So when Jesus comes and the government's on his shoulders, absolutely. But as far as feeling secure, it only means more invasion. I mean, the amount of gold that's been bought recently and the amount of physical gold that is being put out there, people want to be able to buy and sell gold without having identity. You can take a ounce of gold, you can go right down to some pawn shops, some jewelry shops, and say, I'd like to sell this, and they'll give you generally 95, 96% of the value of the gold, which the other day hit almost $3,500. So there's a lot of gold trading going on, and so that's one way. And the government doesn't like that, Marco, because they want the capital gains on that, but they don't know anything about it. It's all a
Absolutely.
cash business or a cash and check, whichever way you want. So but people are taking profits off of it, and let's hope it's a good divestiture, but the investment, but the invasion of our privacy. Listen, this Jacob has been saying for a long time, we're on the road to the mark of the beast. And this is one more step, one more step, one more
Yeah,
step.
no doubt. I'm going to ask Jay real quick. Jay, you got a real ID just recently. Do you feel safe? According to Christy Nome, you should feel safe. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't feel safe. I think the idea that this little piece of plastic inside my passport is going to do anything in the end to make me safe or make my country better, it's just a globalist lie.
Yeah.
Um, they're not going to, there's no state in the entire United States that's going to require a real ID to vote. So the whole idea is somehow that's going to help me. No. The idea that you can't have forged passports with digital ID. Oh, come on. What century do we live in? Everything can be faked. Everything can
Yep.
be hacked.
Yep.
If we're dealing with a Rumble hack today, and
This
yet
is Rumble. This is Rumble.
this is
Massive
Rumble,
company. Yeah.
and they can't stop the hack. So the idea, okay, this is going to displease a lot of people, but the idea, um, first of all, I like Trump, but here's where he falls down. As much as he talks about sovereignty, he talks about going against the globalists, he's walking right into it right here. This is what they've been pushing for. This is the social credit score. This is the beginning of that. And he's giving it to them.
Jay, I got to ask you a question as best as you can. Obviously, you're always honest about things, but is it nefarious? Is it naivete, or is it a double agent, bad cop, good cop type stuff with the Trump administration? And I know, look, people hate Trump, people love Trump. There's an extreme polarization, and then there's reality, right? But what do you think?
At this point with this letdown, I'm just saying this for right now. He could change. He could change me, but I think that it is a bait and switch. I
Ooh,
think that the fact that we are here today discussing the digital ID, which is the Chinese social credit score being pushed by the Trump administration, shows that we really have no choice when it comes to democracy. They're going to put up people that will be their willing puppets no matter what side. Sorry.
no, that's all right. That's going to get either a lot of people upset or a lot of people just went like this because it's such polarization even among viewers and why. And I could imagine people in my head going like, "That's right, Jay," or "No, no, Jay, come on, you're being too black pill. You're not enough red pill. We need a red pill." Jacob, what do you think? Red pill, black pill, white pill? What do you think?
I think Mr. Trump is looking at the short to medium term advantages and not wanting other nations to get the precedent over the United States and being the first to do it. I think another factor in the equation is BRICS. Okay, so I think he's looking at all of those things, and he's willing to take the risk or sacrifice
Yeah.
the longer term ramifications of this potentially because of the realities of wanting to be first and because of the issue of risk threatening the dollar's position as the basis of basic world currency reserve. That's what he's thinking of. That's what any president would think of. That's what he's doing. And so, in order to protect that status of the dollar, which gives America a tremendous advantage, he's willing to play down the potential consequences of it. That's what I think.
Yeah, no,
What about the Fed having any control over this too? That's kind of an interesting question.
yeah, if they go CBDC, yeah, you're talking a whole different ballgame there.
That's
You
the
don't have to
end
worry
goal.
about
That is so the end goal, though.
Yeah,
You can already tell by just the displays that I've seen what the digital ID does, as far as surveillance. It's going to CBDC. That's the direction. That's the foundation it's building right now.
Jacob, I'm going to ask you about China as we finish the episode here. China, desperately for a deal, maybe quietly doing it. There are some things that are not, heavily tariffed anymore in China coming in from the U.S. There are certain things that they're kind of acquiescence, but there's also the UK deal, although not official. It's in the works, and of course Canada and Carney being here, Klaus Carney from the World Economic Forum being here and making a joke. Canada's not for sale for what Trump said. Well, never say never. So, your thoughts on those three things?
First of all, if Britain does it, it brings tremendous pressure on the major Commonwealth economies, including Australia and Canada and New Zealand, to get on board with it. Okay. That's why he's going for Britain first. Okay. Britain still has London still is a financial and banking center where there's a lot of capital investment in the Commonwealth countries, even in the Caribbean as well. But that is one factor. It's why one of the reasons he's going for Britain first. And again, of the Five Eyes, these at the center of the Five Eyes is the Anglo-American special relationship. Okay, so that is one factor. China is something different. China, they've got the long-term demographic time bomb of losing 600 million people. And well, India's population is going to grow. That's their first problem. Okay. That's their first problem. But they've got to keep that problem on the back burner to deal with the nearer term problems. The nearer term problems, growing unemployment, growing youth unemployment. Okay. Huge explosive debt, both personal debt, corporate debt, and government debt by both local governments and national government. Worse
I
than the
think
United
it's 256 billion. I think 200 of debt
Yeah, but I mean,
on
you
the
talk
private sector.
in percentage of United States is bad, but in percentage of GDP, the Asian countries, Japan, and especially China are in worse shape. Okay, even Singapore, which is considered the most solvent economy in Southeast Asia, their public debt is 200% of GDP. It's worse than the United States. Asia is all of Asia's like that, but China is the biggest.
The biggest.
That's a shorter term problem. Then well, it's a short and a longer term problem. The other problem is they had a 21% already, a 21% decrease in trade with the United States, a 21% decrease in exports to the USA. That is something they cannot afford at the time for the time being. The other factor is, remember, China is building a war machine. The United States does not just see the trade as a trade issue. It sees it part and parcel of not funding or financing China's capacity to continue to expand its arsenal and its potential military aggression in the South China Sea. They are using economics as a military factor. Remember, this is what brought down the Soviet Union. This is what brought down the Soviet Union. They have the Soviets spending so much on weapons. When Reagan went with the Star Wars, okay?
Yeah.
Now that was hurting the United States. It hurt the United States. It drove the deficits way up, paying for aircraft carriers with credit cards. But the United States could better afford it than the Soviets. Okay, the United States with the Saudi Arabians who are angry over the Soviet invasion of a Muslim country, Afghanistan, partnered to drive down the price of Russian oil. They waged economic warfare against the Soviet Union and forced its disintegration. What you see happening very much is the same kind of thing. The use of an economic weapon uh, in a strategic conflict. You are undermining the capital base and the industrial base of your adversary, which is China, through economic means. You're waging economic warfare. That is the other factor. I always say to understand China, read Sun Tzu, but the art of war. But don't forget, people who go to Harvard Business School and Princeton Business School and London School of Economics, and people who go to West Point and Sandhurst also read Sun Tzu. You know what I mean? China is predictable. China is always predictable. They follow Sun Tzu like a book, like a roadmap. They've got to follow Sun Tzu. If you once you understand that, you know what they're going to do and how they're going to react. Mr. Trump knew what they were going to do. No matter what they say publicly, whatever China says publicly is for the consumption of their own public. Don't watch what people say, watch what people do. A 21% decline in exports to the United States is at a time like this, when they're already battling unemployment and huge debt, is something China can't handle.
Yeah. David Lister, tell me about Canada. Do you think they're coming to the table? Only two countries have not been willing, or at least on face value, they're not willing. Canada and China. That tells you something, doesn't it?
Well, I think China's meeting with Treasury Secretary. Some agents of China are meeting this weekend. So I think they are coming to the table. They're having a lot of economic troubles in China.
Factories closing.
Huh?
Factories closing.
Factories closing.
Not getting
People
paid.
are flooding out of the cities because they know what happens when you get locked into the city. So they're having that. And so China's having to rescope the way it does real estate and the speculation. So they want to get out of that. And so they need to come to the table because they live on exports. They don't let people into their marketplace, and they don't have money. The Chinese people don't have money to be consumers like Americans or Europeans do. So they have to come to the table, and the tariffs are working on them. And he's going to let some down, but they're talking like stopping them at 60%, which was above the 20%. So we should still make money on it.
Yep.
And then as far as
fanatical savers, but they saved their money in the wrong way. They bought real estate.
that's right. Yep. And that's why they're having to rescope their whole real estate market, which was all a shadow anyway. But Canada has to come. They have a big surplus, but if we're not selling them and if we're not buying anything from them, well, we're not getting hurt. And then, like Trump has said multiple times, we have the lumber, we have the oil, we have a lot of the things that they need. We just need to buy some aluminum and everything till we get ours going again. So,
David,
Jay, something?
Yeah, go ahead. Was it Jay?
Real quick,
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention from our previous topics, we're going to try to run some polls on YouTube since we have the ability. And we ran a poll. The question was, will Europe become a part of a worldwide Islamic empire? And from the Moriel audience, 10% actually reporting in, 57% believe that it will indeed become part of an Islamic worldwide empire. 42% of our audience is very, very optimistic and says no, it will indeed not.
No, that's interesting. Thank you for that poll, and thank you for those who responded to that. Thank you, Jay. That's a pretty good question. It's a pretty good insight, and the trend doesn't look good. the trend is your friend until the end, and then it doesn't look good. Jacob, final thought on Carney. He's a very zero carbon WUF guy. He's one of the 4 guys, by the way, who's on the trust, like on the board of trustees, and also one of the founding board members. So he's no small guy when it comes to the global system. He wants to implement more climate policies, so Canada continues not to produce oil. Not to produce oil. Will this bode fair? Will this bode well for the American oil producing companies?
Like Trudeau, like Albanese, like that woman in New Zealand who's gone. What was her name? Ardern. He's
Either.
like Tony Blair. He is a Schwab slob. There's no question. He is
A big
first
one.
and foremostly a Schwab slob. That is true. But look at his record in London. Look what he did with the Bank of England. The guy is not a winner. He's a loser. He's not a winner. He is a loser. Canada, 90% of its population lives within 100 miles of the United States. It simply does not have the economic wherewithal without the American markets. Now, he may pivot towards China.
It's crazy. That would
Yeah.
be crazy.
And that will be to the detriment, ultimately to the detriment of Canada. You've got all these people from Hong Kong who flooded into Vancouver to get away from China, who hate China. So he's going to alienate his own Chinese population doing it. But he's not that clever.
Yeah. They got him there, and
Yep.
he was basically, selected to be there. So, all right, very good. So, thank you so much, Jacob and David, Jay, for this episode of Catching Up with Jacob. We are going to go to backstage because we got some questions. And if you, Jay, update me, did they send them in on Rumble or did we go to YouTube for the question?
We took them from all. So we have all the questions that were on YouTube, all the questions on X, and all the questions on Rumble.
And
Plus, we had a
some-
bunch from last week.
Yeah. Jacob, you got to work overtime tonight. So we got to keep you on. God bless you guys. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes, except on Facebook and YouTube. You won't be seeing us there. So jump on the other ones, Memorial TV, X, Rumble, Telegram, and Vimeo. What's the other one? MemorialTV.org and RTN. So God bless you guys. We'll see you soon.
Hello, and thank you for watching Memorial TV. There are so many things that are happening at Memorial Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.